any questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
You said that was all just one oscillator?
Yeah.
Doing all of that?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oscillator, the only other noise source was a low pass filter that was just self-oscillating.
Right. Crazy.
So, and that was just the kick.
That was doing the kick, was just the self-oscillating filter? Yeah,
Yeah.
the kick.
So good.
Yeah, it was, and it honestly, it kind of held everything together. Like,
Yeah,
just had
that's
that consistent rhythm.
Yeah, I wanted it to just kind of do the thing. And then anytime I wanted the kick to get longer, it was also running through a VCA, and I was just kind of attenuating the baseline for like or the DC offset, I guess. So I was increasing the DC offset, which meant that instead of kind of like returning to 0, it was returning to kind of like these kind of like self-resonating or self-oscillating frequencies. So you'd hear like the boo, kind of like holding a little bit longer rather than kind of like cutting off and actually like tailing off.
It's funny that you're just like purposefully trying to break shit to make sound a little bit, like get a filter to self-oscillate.
For me, like
push
the most fun part about modular is the modulation and using like VCAs, LFOs, envelopes to control things. And like the oscillator I was using I was just outputting 2 different square waves. One was an octave lower. So, you know, I'm not trying to use like a lot of sound sources, but I think there's like a lot you can do with very little in terms of, you know, what's actually making sound.
Yeah, totally.
I don't really like complex oscillators. I like to understand what's going on. You know, it's like I know what a square wave looks like. I know what that voltage is going to look like. You know, if I put that on like a oscilloscope, let's see like a nice little like boop, 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 boop. And I understand, you know, what is actually happening in the patch at a fairly deep level. Like I just threw this together yesterday. And I personally think there's like a lot of fun and you can actually like learn a lot about not just like how Eurorack works, but just like how audio works in general, especially in terms of like how it relates to electrical signals, which is useful for, you know, recording, you know, outside of electronic instruments, you know, like what is distortion? You know, what's actually happening to the waveform? How can you replicate that? Things like that. It's super interesting and you can get a lot out of it.
Hell yeah.
So you're not using like a drum sequencer to create that. It's just
there was like a pattern sequencer to like say when the drums were gonna trigger. And it was just sending like a little, you know, impulse saying, make a drum sound, which is telling an envelope to make the kick envelope that I designed, which is being sent to 2 places. It's being sent to the VCA just so that I can, when it returns to 0, it will return to 0. The other is the frequency of a low pass filter, so that gives you kind of like the sweep as opposed to just like a, so.
What drew you to variegate as your sort of, you know, the main source of rhythm?
It's reasonably small. Had memory. Yeah, it was mostly just size. Honestly, it was just reasonably small. Being able to do CV and gate sequencing, or just gate sequencing, or just CV sequencing is super sweet. And I also like that it could pair with the Moleco Quad VCA to just like quickly, you know, when I was jumping between, I had 4 different 8s. I was only using 8-step sequences because that's what the variegate does. And it probably sounded a little bit repetitive as a result, but I like that it also was able to control the VCA, so when I was jumping across the presets, it was going to make sure everything was like relatively in the right place volume-wise, you know, accepting that, you know, I'm going to have my delay going to be in different spots, filters are going to be in different spots, but like everything is going to be kind of relatively contained for a performance setting.
Were you using any effects? It kind of sounded
A delay.
almost like just delay. Was there any hard sync in there or anything like that?
No, just delay. Yeah, if you'd like, I can kind of just like turn this around and do like a quick walk through what's going on. So oscillators, Dixie is just a basic oscillator. It's being fed a sequence from variegate, which is just, you know, telling it to play something that resembles notes. that is going to two places. The lower sine wave or square wave is going directly into my VCA mixer. That is being it is being controlled with its volume is being controlled with the kick envelope, so that it's kind of doing the side chain thing. So it's just kind of being pulled back. The other side is being sent to. Just did this yesterday, so I don't really remember. Oh, it's just going into a filter, just oscillator to filter. The oscillator is also being modulated by white noise that is being gated. So you might have heard it. It was kind of subtle, but you might have heard like some kind of at certain points, depending on where the filter was set. That was just the module or it being frequency or FM. And that's going. And then the sequences, I've actually combined two sequences just to kind of expand my 8 steps. So I've got my 8-step sequence, and then I'm combining two sequences. One's running at a much slower rate, and then that one is kind of pitch shifting the sequence, so it ends up, and it's, I believe, on a 7-step pattern instead, so it ends up being like slightly evolving. Not dramatically so, it still is, had very much same, 8-steppy feel throughout. And then, that's just being fed into a delay.
What delay is it?
It is disting, which
Sweet.
is being a delay this time, but
Yeah.
yesterday it was being a Euclidean generator
Heck yeah.
beforehand, and just like very economical choices I'm trying to select a lot of space-saving modules. Like the biggest non-space saver is maths. It's very big, but I like it. It was my only module for like 4 or 5 months, and honestly, I was making like some pretty gnarly kicks out of it. So, yeah, if you're getting into your art, you can just get away with getting like a single module so long as it's like reasonably versatile. I like maths as a first one. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's also like never gonna go out of style, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like there's like one other maths on stage, but you see it in a lot of cases for a reason.
Yeah.
Any other questions at all?
What's your favorite module in the world?
I like the Dynamic. I think that's just like a really cool module. It's just a VCA, technically not a VCA, it's a low pass gate, but I don't actually know the difference. It doesn't make a huge, it operates as a VCA. I like it just because it's a VCA that's kind of has like a little bit of a character to it. So, I like VCAs. I have 6 VCAs in my case for my one oscillator. So.
Awesome. Heck yeah.